because I usually look at those features. Let me say something.
And the bold part about the CRISPR is important.
Yes, yes.
Because that's our initiative that we have together with Ambassador. He's the director of the center.
Because I read that you're very involved in peace building also. Yes, yes. Which is the key issue for our region.
I can say, Dr. Abdullah has an honorary doctorate on peace building issues.
Not honorary doctor.
He's a real doctor.
He's a real doctor. He spent 4 years.
The Danish one. The Danish one.
Fantastic. So we need to still to 100 pages. We need to work together more.
I'm so sorry for you.
Have an honorary doctor.
Great, so thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us during this very busy day and very busy COP28. It's a pleasure to have you all here. This is our high-level session on capacity development for climate action and sustaining peace, a dialogue on lessons learned and ways forward. As we are trying to get to net zero as soon as possible, as we're trying to deliver on climate action, peace and security, some of the most important investments that we can make are in capacity, right? Again, getting to net zero, strengthening prevention, peace building, critical to all of this, with $1 million, $10 million, $100 million, these investments don't mean anything unless we have that capacity, unless we have that vision, and unless we have the leadership as well. And we are delighted to say that we are delivering on this as UNDP, as Triple CPA, as COP27 presidency as well, and that we are making these most important investments in capacities for climate peace and security. And so we have an incredible session today with many esteemed speakers, and I'm going to jump right in as we are slightly behind the schedule. But to kick us off, I'm glad to be able to invite Ambassador Ahmed Abdul-Latif. He's Director General of the Cairo International Center for Conflict Prevention, Peacekeeping and Peace Building. He's served as a diplomat since 1997, and he's worked in various different capacities, both in climate, including with IRENA as permanent observer for Egypt, and then also most recently with the Cairo Center. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine. It's a great pleasure and honor to be having this event on this important issue of capacity building with two essential key partners of our center and of the initiative that we launched at COP27 on climate responses for sustaining peace. UNDP and the African Union Commission were very appreciative of the excellent partnership and collaboration on the initiative and on this issue in particular of capacity building. We have seen also at COP28, there was especially Peace Day for the first time, and a declaration that was issued on climate relief, recovery, and peace, which actually references and supports the COP27 presidency initiative on climate responses for sustaining peace, and also brings forward many areas of work that we have been working on and we will continue to work on, and in particular in the issue of strengthening capacities. Why is capacity building important? Capacity building is important in this issue of climate and peace for several reasons. It is a new and emerging issue, right, with many ramifications and many implications. And still the understanding of the issue, its implications, its impacts, its relationship with conflict is still, you know, a work in progress. There's mobility who comes in, etc. And we need a paradigm shift in how we deal with this issue to promote holistic responses. Responses that address simultaneously adaptation, peace building, resilience, development together, not separate. So to advance these holistic responses, we need also to strengthening capacities at the national, regional level for having the people who are responsible for these issues to take them forward. So under the CRISP initiative since last year, one of the key pillars has been to address capacity gaps under the initiative or under this area of work on climate, peace and security. As Cairo Center, we are a training center, we're a capacity building center originally, so this remains an important area of focus. And we have worked particularly on a program, on a training program, there's some brochure about it, called Climate Programming for Sustaining Peace. Climate Programming for Sustaining Peace is a first-of-a-kind program designed in Africa, delivered in partnership with the African Union Commission, with inputs and expertise from partners such as UNDP, and it really tries to inform policymakers at the African level of climate risks and how they can take climate risks on board in all areas of public policy programming, not only in environment and climate, but also agriculture, humanitarian affairs, sustainable development, etc. So it's cost-cutting, cross-sectoral, and with a focus on holistic responses. We've done 2 iterations so far, trained around 60 African officials and officials from regional organizations, and we hope to continue scaling up that training next year with a regional focus in different regions in Africa. We've also collaborated with UNDP on its Experts Academy, which is also an important initiative to raise awareness among policymakers, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it, and very happy about this collaboration, which is complementary also to what we're doing. Just to finish by saying, capacity building is not an end in itself. We have to remember this in a very important manner. The ultimate goal is that, particularly our focus at the national level, at the local level, there is empowerment, there is lasting capacities that are built to deliver and to take action on the climate, peace and security nexus, and we look forward to continue the excellent collaborations with our partners to take in this area. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much, Ambassador, as well, for reminding us about the focus of capacity development that delivers on empowerment. Next up, I'm delighted to invite Assistant Secretary General Abdullah Al-Dardari, who is the Regional Director for UNDP for the Arab States. He has led an extensive career in conflict prevention, in post-conflict construction as well, serving with the World Bank and UNDP, most recently in Afghanistan, before taking up his current assignment.
Thank you, Catherine. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. I don't actually usually read speeches written for me. I try to improvise, but Catherine did an excellent speech, so I'm going to read it. I'm not putting you on the spot here or anything, am I? Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, nearly 3/4 of the most climate vulnerable countries suffer from conflict and fragility. That is a very telling number. Yet, there has been a clear deficit in connecting climate action with action on conflict prevention and recovery. I'm not sure we have developed yet a causality, a robust, well-designed causality between climate vulnerability and fragility and conflicts. That's a field, an area of work that we should deepen. This is particularly important in parts of Africa like the Sahel and the Horn of Africa, and for the broader African and the Arab region, where communities face increasingly multidimensional crisis. The landmark COP28 declaration on climate, relief, recovery and peace that we endorse as UNDP, one, embraces the complexity of addressing growing levels of fragility around the world and brings climate and peace policy closer together. And we hope, in the same way, that the new Loss and Damage Fund brings to bear new and additional financing for climate vulnerable countries, not leaving behind those affected by conflict and insecurity. In many cases, as you all know, when a conflict starts or erupts, development financing dries up and we all move towards humanitarian funding, what we need to do is exactly the opposite. But we need to create the right conducive conditions and find the necessary resources. Today, we are honored to be joined by our close partners, CCCPA, on behalf of the COP27 presidency and the African Union Commission, as well as the policymakers from different countries responding to climate change on a front line of fragility and crisis. As the largest implementer of climate change and peace-building programming in the UN family, the United Nations Development Programme is providing communities with the critical support they need. That includes our role as a partner in the COP27 presidency's climate responses for sustaining peace, CRISP. Yes, they want me to read it as CRISP.
That's right, you were right.
Here I am, I'm a good student. CRISP initiative, which brought the Sustaining Peace agenda to Climate COP for the first time. Our Climate Promise initiative is also supporting 120 plus countries across the globe to enhance and implement ambitious nationally determined contributions, including 50 fragile and conflict-affected countries and territories. In Somalia, for example, UNDP helped enhance the NDC by mainstreaming climate security and human security, as well as focusing on early warning systems as a means of taking preventive actions. This aims to reducing the risks from more frequent and severe climate-induced disasters, displacements, loss and damage, and loss of lives and livelihoods. I'm sure we can recount countless examples of where drought, for example, and mismanagement of droughts and the bad governance of droughts caused and contributed to conflicts. I give you Syria, my country. The 2006 to 2006 drought was one of the main causes of the implosion that happened in 2011. The mismanagement of the drought, not just the drought, mismanaging the drought, and I was in government and I'm responsible for that. Mismanaging the drought was a contributor to the implosion that we faced in 2011. UNDP has also mobilized over $424 million in climate change adaptation financing for more than 40 countries affected by fragility and conflict, with 573 million in the pipeline. In the Arab region, for example, new climate initiatives are now emerging along with partner UN agencies, the private sector and governments to support fragile and in-conflict countries like Lebanon, Syria, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen, with support of donors like the Adaptation Fund, the Green Climate Fund, and the LDC Fund. With millions around the world suffering both climate and conflict, we have enough evidence for action, and through our work, we also have proof of concept of innovative win-win solutions for climate, peace, and security. In breaking the vicious cycle of climate and insecurity, our investments in capacity development, the subject of today's event, remain key to leveraging policy, action, and financing. Through the Global Climate Security Mechanism, CSM, we are proud to have seconded dedicated climate, peace, and security expertise to regional entities like the Liptako-Gourma Authority, Lake Chad Basin Commission, and the League of Arab States. For example, with the latter, UNDP's SDG Climate Facility Regional Program, in partnership with WFP, UNEP Financing Initiative, UNDRR, and others, has supported regional assessment and capacity development activities to enhance understanding of and action on climate security. Through our expert academy, Dr. Ahmed mentioned, together with the Egypt COP27 presidency and CCCPA, through this CRISP initiative, in just 1 year, our training on climate policy and financing for peace has reached 200 policymakers from 82 countries and territories, including those affected by conflict and fragility. 55% of them are women. Many are attending COP28 with us, and you will get to hear from a few of them in the panel today, sharing practical experiences in innovative climate policies for sustaining peace. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of UNDP, as we celebrate the first anniversary of CRISP, we would like to reiterate at COP28, as we did at COP27, that we are committed to working with our partners to advance the climate action for sustaining peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Abdallah. And next up, we have Dr. Prosper Addo on behalf of the African Union Commission, who's been a key partner to climate responses for sustaining peace as well. He is Senior Political Affairs Advisor and also Deputy Head of Mission of the African Union Commission in South Sudan. He has a PhD in International Relations from King's College London and has served with the African Union Commission in political affairs, humanitarian affairs as well, and climate change since 2008.
Thank you. I hope is it okay? Hello? Hello? Yeah? Okay. Okay. Good, is it afternoon? Yes, good afternoon, and let me recognize excellencies and distinguished participants. I bring you greetings from the African Union, and specifically His Excellency Adeoye Bankole, Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security of the African Union Commission. And to say that I'm very privileged and honored to be here to listen to experts share with us the essence or the importance of capacity building in this particular nexus between climate change, peace, and security. I think I'll follow suit on what Ambassador Ahmed stated, to say that capacity building delivers output and not outcome. And if it's supposed to be delivering output, then it is a means to an end. And what would be this means? It is to empower officials of government in AU member states, groups, civil societies, and individuals in the continent to understand the climate change impacts and appropriate responses. Indeed, the debate is still ongoing on the linkages that are not too clear, but our hope is to see how best one can deepen this understanding on the nexus, because whether directly or indirectly, there are impacts, there are effects based on vulnerabilities, on livelihoods. And as a result, based on all these hazards and stresses, we need to find ways of adapting to risks, to all these vulnerabilities. But the essential thing here to note is that climate change impacts bring out issues of exposure and competition. And once people are exposed and are competing over limited resources, there's bound to be tension, there's bound to be conflicts. So capacity building is meant to share knowledge and experiences in an integrated and holistic manner for catalytic responses. And capacity building will bridge the knowledge gap, sensitize the masses, and make responses effective. Hence, the CCCPA, in collaboration with the AU, specifically EU Commission Department for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, and the UNDP under the COP27 presidency, CRISP initiative, that's Climate Response for Sustaining Peace Program, initiative developed the Climate Security Experts course on the nexus between climate change, peace, and security. Now, this climate responsive policy and programming course trains officials of government for effective contributions to their nationally determined contributions or national adaptation, resilience, or mitigation plans with an eye on climate security risks and threats. And so loss and damage is a security issue, and so is adaptation and mitigation. They all have impact on securities. So with capacities, we can help minimize conflicts, prevent disaster through early warning, silence the guns, and devise or contribute essentially to resilience in the areas of food, water, energy, security, humanitarian relief, and peace building in the areas of peace building or post-conflict reconstruction and development. We have the experts, and they are here to share with us the need for capacity building in terms of lessons and the way forward in enhancing climate security responses as part of an integrated whole. And so I'll conclude on this note by saying that let's always bear in mind that security is just freedom from threats, from needs, from wants, and as long as we can guarantee that in a peaceful environment, we can aid development and live in a peaceful manner. I thank you all.
Thank you. I'm going to try this mic. Thank you so much, Prosper. Thank you, Abdullah, and thank you, Ambassador Ahmed, for joining us in the high-level remarks. I'm delighted to invite now our panelists to join us on stage. So, Bob, Emily, Tendai, Aminu, if you're able to join us. Thank you so much.
Can we use this mic?
And I can pass the other one down. Yes, please. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Great. So thanks so much. So it's great to be able to move into the technical part of this session. And as mentioned earlier, we have experts here from our Climate Peace and Security Academy from the previous iterations who can speak to some of these issues as policymakers, as climate change negotiators, as part of their national delegations as well to what the issues are. And the question that we're putting to each of them is, what are the biggest challenges for climate peace and security in your country or your regional context? What are the other capacity gaps and how are they being addressed? So first up, I'd like to invite Bob Natifu. He is Assistant Commissioner at the Climate Change Department in the Ministry of Water and Environment, a ministry in Uganda that's responsible for overall coordination of national climate change response. He's worked on various high-level initiatives, including the nationally determined contribution, the national communications, and has been part of the National Climate Change Delegation to the COP for several years now. So, Bob, you have the floor.
Okay, so thanks very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'll not go into introductions again. I'll go straight into the providing responses to some of the questions that have been posed. From my understanding, addressing fragility and conflict should be part of resilience building. And I hear the keynote speakers that have really outlined this out so well. But the question from where we're coming from, how is that actually being addressed within the policy context that we've set? The ambassadors and everybody else has been talking about the NDCs that we've done, adaptation planning that we've done. But when you look at all those documents that we have, I think you may not point out anything specific to deal directly with fragility and how we address that nexus. So for me, I think that's the key starting point. Now that the Paris Agreement and the NDCs that we formulate every point in time speak about this 5-year renewal of NDCs and up through until Sharm el-Sheikh or Glasgow, we actually increased it to every year. So can we use that as a starting point in terms of addressing this? The second point is countries like Uganda have advanced nature-based solutions as a response to climate change. But that actually is negated by the fact that there's lots of fragility and conflict that exists either within or outside the boundaries that we have. So the more people that come into the space where we are talking about conserving forests or wetlands or whatever nature-based solutions that we are putting forward is negated because these people demand for wood energy for household needs. So in this sense, you will not be able to meet the climate targets that you've set forth because conflict and fragility happening not just within our own countries, but also within the neighboring countries that we're faced with has a corresponding impact with what we've set forth to achieve. Final reflections I want to make this around this is bound around the financing that is required to address these challenges. But financing, of course, as we all know in the room, everybody is going to think about money, which ideally shouldn't be the case. For me, I see this in about 3 ways. That money, climate finance is not always about finance and money as it is. Climate finance should be bound around this momentum that we are trying to create to address fragility and this conflict that we're faced with. Climate finance should be around formulating the right policies to address the nexus that we are faced with. Climate finance should be around solidarity, and by formulating all these other institutions that you're talking about, be it CRISP or be it any other initiatives that there are that exist, in the long run should create the solidarity that we so much require to address this nexus. And finally, I think elevating the very critical voices that clearly understand this nexus is critically important. And those voices ultimately will lead up into the rooms that we very much so need them. Currently, we are talking about the global stocktake, and the global stocktake is helping us reflect how far have we come since Paris 2015, and what more additions do we have to have in order to advance climate resilience within our spaces. Finally, there was a talk around the decision on, the very much adopted decision on loss and damage, and making sure that we have this framework operationalized. And the fund is critically important. The fund, from my view, gives us some kind of steer or direction within which we can intensify these discussions. To those of you that follow these discussions, the fund is bound around 3 key areas: overlapping resilience, and we can agree on how that is defined. It's also bound around rehabilitation and bound around reconstruction. So therein lies a very key opportunity where this community of practice that we are trying to build can start making even more advanced and more nuanced discussions around taking this fragility, conflict, peace, and climate change within this already existing space that we have. Thank you very much.
Right, and thank you so much, Bob, as well. Thank you for making the connection to loss and damage, and we'll be discussing more about peace-positive loss and damage tomorrow. Thank you for also connecting us to policy. Finance is the instrument of policy, and as you said, solidarity is key here, particularly with those who don't have a voice or platform to be able to contribute to these important discussions like dialogues that we're having here today as well. Next up, I'm delighted to invite Emily Matingo. She is Principal Climate Change Specialist with her government within the Climate Change Management Department of the Government of Zimbabwe. She has more than a decade of experience in programming on climate change. She's penned several articles on climate change adaptation and also training modules. She holds a degree in development studies and also in law. Emily, you have the floor, and if it's possible to help pass on the microphone. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, colleagues. In terms of the conversation that we are discussing here today, I would just like to add on the Zimbabwean perspective to say that we are facing challenges in terms of increased occurrence of extreme weather events, which will ultimately then impact on responses in terms of peace and security. As you know that if an extreme weather event such as flooding occurs, it leads to displacement, it leads to other security issues as people may be marooned or they are stuck in certain areas and they need to be evacuated and other issues. So it also points out to the need to strengthen aspects to do with early warning and response measures along that regard. And then just to add on, within the context of climate change, the studies that have been done within the Zimbabwean context would then point to the fact that we have increased occurrence of these extreme weather events, and this would mean concerted efforts are also being made in terms of strengthening early warning. And another issue, I think, in terms of the challenges regards to the point in conversation would be to say that there is need to look into the social structures or social settings as well as integrating indigenous knowledge systems within the whole context of peace and security and the nexus with climate change, because you'll find that sometimes during measures to evacuate people, maybe as a result of a flood or a disaster, people may say or may be reluctant to move to go to another area because maybe they have got their traditional setups there or graves of their fathers and so forth. So maybe somebody can actually end up being jeopardized or have their life in danger because they don't want to leave their traditional setup. So it's another thing that we want to see how it can be integrated, the context of indigenous knowledge systems as well as social settings within climate change. Then another issue I think ultimately linked to the former one relates to behavioral change. Because when you look at this nexus of climate change, peace and security, the key important issue I think boils down to behavioral change of the people that are impacted mostly, maybe be it the extreme weather events, to say they may have certain traditional aspects that they'll be doing, but are they then willing? Somebody can say that you want to evacuate us from this place based on, or you're projecting to say there's a flood, but maybe throughout the 100 years that my generation has lived here, we've never heard that there is a flood of that magnitude to happen. So that behavioral change maybe can be interlinked with issues to do with raising awareness in order to address such issues. I think for now I'll stop at that and then I'll add on later.
Great, thank you so much, Emily. Thank you for making these really important connections as well to not only climate displacement but forced relocation, populations that may be trapped as well and not able to move, and then also connections with the prevention of violent extremism, all important factors for us when we're talking about the climate, peace and security nexus. Next up, we have another expert, another colleague and friend, Tendai Kaziganetti. He is a Senior Political Affairs Officer with the African Union Commission. He has more than a decade of experience working on environment, climate change adaptation, mitigation and policy. Also UNDP alumna, delighted to have a colleague here who has experience as well on climate finance, NDCs and sustainable development. He's been leading a very important piece of work together with our Adelphi colleagues. I see Bia has joined us here today as well, so we're delighted to hear more about the continental risk assessment on climate security risk as well. Today you have the floor.
Thank you so very much, Catherine, for that introduction. Excellencies and fellow attendees, good afternoon. Today, I would like to start by emphasizing the significance of the current year that we are in, 2023, with the interesting mention of the Peace Day at COP28, which is a significant milestone for those who have been following the topic of climate change, peace and security. And as already mentioned, I would like to indicate that 2023 is also a very important year, as we have got the global stock tech that has already been mentioned, which also offers a timely opportunity to account for all possible pathways to incorporate and address climate change, peace and security into the discussions, and to identify what other areas have been left behind on the negotiation table. And the global stock tech offers that opportunity, and it is the way that we are going to take it and address to ensure that it is mainstreamed into the main negotiations. Looking at the major challenges that we have in the climate change, peace and security, looking at the African Union's perspective, we acknowledge that there is a lack of common understanding given the different players, but this is often as a result of how different are we being affected by climate security, how the different regions and the trans-regional geographies, they are getting affected by climate change in their own respect. So we identified various pathways within which climate security manifests itself, ranging from Central Africa, North Africa, East, West, and Southern Africa. There are various different climate security issues that manifest. However, when we look from a human security perspective, with a human security lens, we identify that we are all experiencing climate security risks, and they need to be addressed in a certain way. To enhance this gray area and to further understanding, the climate change peace and security nexus is a rapidly evolving topic, and a lot of changes are coming. And the African Union Peace and Security Council recommended that there should be a study that was undertaken, as mentioned, with support from Adelphi, the Africa Climate Security Risk Assessment that has been developed, which tries to enhance and deepen our understanding of the interlinkages that are existing between these three main pillars of climate change, peace and security. And various pathways have been identified, how we are affected, how we can mainstream affected and vulnerable groups, identifying issues around the seeds, identifying various issues that mainstream in the various and different geographies. We are going to have a presentation later on the 8th, that we're going to debunk more and discuss on the findings of the Accra, but the importance of capacity building is one of the key building blocks that have been identified within the study and the major recommendations that have been put together. To also address some of the major issues and highlights identified, you need to advocate for the implementation of community programs, especially at grassroots levels, so that you can be able to identify and understand and point where impact is being made. I would also like to draw a point on inclusivity and linkages from a regional perspective. There is need to consider women, youth, children, and marginalized group in all climate change, peace and security interventions that are going to be implemented as we are planning from a holistic approach. And these existing linkages that are being implemented by UNDP, UN Mission to Somalia, IGAD, they are implementing a climate security mechanism. So there is need to create those linkages, learn from ongoing programs and projects, so that you can accelerate various responses to identify and address the climate security challenges being experienced on the ground. I would like to make a reference made by Emily to also draw a point on integrated early warning systems from the issues of conflict early warning systems and climate early warning systems, and how we can draw indicators and linkages and various to identify how can we ensure indicators are collected from both early warning systems to enhance response. Lastly, I would like to draw a point on climate financing, as already mentioned. We have got the mainstream climate financing options that we undertake or that we utilize. But this is also an opportunity to start exploring how conflict-affected areas and vulnerable regions and communities can also access other financing options that can be able to sustain peace. We can be able to look at issues such as the Article 6 and how we can be able to integrate and implement, despite the conflict sensitiveness of the projects that are being implemented. We should be able to design how best can we promote green transition within these communities. How can we utilize green bonds? How can we get carbon crediting mechanisms within these conflict-affected areas? Because at the moment, they are currently not receiving such opportunities, and it is an opportunity where all of us can be able to design programs that best address this lack of access to climate finance, and we should not exclude them from any new or incoming new mechanisms to address or to provide access to climate finance. I would like to end here and allow for others to join in and we can discuss further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tendai. I do apologise for the technical issues just now with the feedback and the sound. Thank you for also making connections, as Emily did, to the most vulnerable and to the communities on the ground that are affected by climate peace and security, even in this kind of continental-wide climate security risk assessment. Thank you for also making the connections to the climate change negotiations, because this is the venue of our discussion today. And climate peace and security is not only a matter for peace and security actors, but also for those of us who work on environment, who work on climate change. Last but definitely not least, we have our excellent colleague Aminu Bala. He is head of Department of Natural Resource Management at Lake Chad Basin Commission. The Lake Chad Basin Commission has done some incredible work on climate peace and security over the last years, really been a vanguard in these issues. Aminu himself is an environmentalist by training. He's worked more than 14 years in the Sahel region and 7 years, beg your pardon, as a wetlands ecologist and leading natural resource management in the Commission. Aminu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Catherine, for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to SCBC. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I will briefly talk about capacity gaps within the Lake Chad Basin region. But then I would like to make it a bit clear that the capacity issues that we are going to discuss related to Lake Chad Basin region has to do with two main problems that we are facing. When we talk of climate change, the main issues that we are having, or main challenge, has to do with the two extreme events, the flooding and drought, because of the geographical location of the catchment, which is south of Sahara. What are the capacity gaps in relation to these two extreme events? In the region, at regional level, we are having two set of capacity issues. I would like to say that there are technical capacity, first of all, and then in technical capacity, I will talk of two issues. One has to do with institutions, meaning the human capacity. Do we really have the human capacity to understand the challenge that we are faced with and address it appropriately? And on the other hand, if we have the human capacity, then do we have the tools or mechanisms that allow us to address the challenges that we are faced with? So these are the set of technical capacity that I would like to talk about. For instance, the national institutions, since we are working at regional level, might not have the sufficient human capacity to respond to the challenges that are coming. So there is need to ensure we improve on that. On the other hand, we are having issues with the tools or mechanisms that will allow us to respond to the issues, like early warning systems. Do we really have a robust early warning system that allow us to anticipate flooding or drought, so we can communicate to the local communities for them to get set and prepare themselves for the eventualities that is likely to happen? So these are the two subset of technical capacities, technical capacity gaps that we are having within the catchment. And then the other capacity gaps that I would like to talk about is, of course, the financial issues. With this kind of huge technical capacity gaps, addressing it will definitely require investment. So looking at the socio-economic or the economic situation of the region, does the state really have the sufficient resources to invest sufficiently in addressing climate issues? That is another gap that we need to consider. So in general, the two main capacity gaps has to do with technical and financial gaps. But then what do we do to address it? We are trying at regional level to support our member states in addressing some of these issues, especially in partnership with our partners, financial and technical partners that are supporting the state. So we are trying to come up with a robust flood and drought early warning system within the Lake Chad Basin. That will support the member countries with a timely information to anticipate drought so that local farmer will know when to sow and what to sow. To also anticipate flooding before it comes so that the issue of the settlement can be taken care of by the state before the hazard happen. On the other hand, to address these challenges, we cannot only address them with having the right tools or mechanism, but also we have to build the institutions. So the national institutions need to be built in the sense that we need to support the national institution with the right, with appropriate tools. So in that regard, we are working in establishing knowledge management platform that will allow the national institution have access to timely data and information that will allow them plan appropriately to ensure that the drought challenges and flooding are well anticipated and addressed appropriately. That is one aspect. On the other aspect, we are supporting still the institutions. For instance, we come up with the idea of developing climate vulnerability studies within the catchment and then fragility assessment within the Lake Chad Basin. This is to give the national government the right information of the situation at hand and make proper recommendations on what is need to be done in addressing the challenges that we are faced with. So we succeeded in conducting the fragility assessment and climate vulnerability studies, and with support of our partners, we are implementing projects, World Bank, African Development Bank, GIZ, that are all with us. Of course, UNDP, that is also supporting us in the implementation of the basin-wide regional stabilization strategy. So we are working together with them to implement projects and programs that address the issues that has been highlighted within those fragility and vulnerability assessments. This is so far what I can bring to you as concern our capacity gaps and what we are doing to address it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Aminu. Thank you for making the connections between the different types of capacities that we need, right? Capacities for analysis, capacities for response, and then also action on the ground. I know Bob also wants to come in on this point as well, so Bob, we'll hand over to you before you leave.
Okay, so thanks very much, and sorry for coming back again, but I thought I would try to emphasize just 2 points of what Aminu has said, because I'm running away at 2. I'm co-facilitating an SBI agenda item, so I may not be here till finish. But 2 things. I think what my colleague talks about is a very clear example of what we all know in terms of what is being done in Lake Chad Basin and how people are affected. I think the question should be, what does that tell us? That tells us something that I said in my remarks about the need for long-term investments. Long-term investments are bound around all spheres that constitute improving lives and individual lives and well-being of communities. You talked about things to do with early warning and so on and so forth. And somebody will quickly bind that around the need for financing. But from the submission I made earlier, making this categorization of financing being around formulating coherent policy, calling for solidarity, and elevating the voices that matter, I think plays a critical concern. But there's also a very good opportunity across all our countries and the spaces we occupy in terms of the policies that we are framing, NDCs, adaptation plans, and so on and so forth. If that connection can begin seeing its light within the policy formulation, I think it will be a key point. There will not be any single mention or reference about fragility, peace, and conflict within the national adaptation planning that we do. There's not any reference about fragility, peace, and conflict within the NDCs that we do. But these are things that the panel has eloquently put forward. And as and when we are able to do that within the coming years, I think will be a good starting point to garner support around addressing these issues holistically. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you so much, Bob, for joining us. Can we have a round of applause for all of our panel as well? Great. And I think that was an excellent point to wrap up on as well. Not what is in our terms of reference, what is in the policies, but what we have to do to be able to make sure that we achieve these policy targets. So thank you again to Bob, thank you to Aminu, thank you to Tendai, and then very big thank you to Emily as well. To wrap up now, this is a difficult task, and I'd like to pass this on to my colleague, Abir Shakwir. She is Assistant Representative for the Egypt Country Office. She's had a distinguished career, more than 20 years, not only in the private sector, but also with government as well. So, Abir, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, dear panelists, for the valuable insights and interventions. Actually, as a wrap-up, I would like to remind you that UNDP, together with Triple CPA and COP27 presidency, have delivered on our promise, ambitious training program through Climate Peace and Security Academy. You had already the chance to hear from some of the high-level participants today. Through the training program, we managed to train 200 participants and policymakers under 5 iterations of the academy, 3 global and 2 regional iterations in Istanbul and Panama, respectively. We also implemented an all-women iteration of the academy in Cairo, which we are very proud of. Which also put light on women, peace and security and climate. Across all our implemented training programs, we had 55 of participants are women. So this is a real inclusion, and we're very aware of the gender element in peace, climate and security capacity building. We actually supported the training of decision makers from 82 countries, from all 5 global regions, including countries affected by fragility and conflict. Finally, I would like to reaffirm our commitment to building capacities for climate action for sustaining peace. And I would like to thank all the attendees for taking the time to be here with us today. Thank you.